What's the role of every returner and freshman for Syracuse basketball next season?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we're going over all of the returners for Syracuse basketball next season, plus the freshmen and their roles for the upcoming year. Yesterday, we talked about the transfers that were coming in. Today, we're talking about the returners and the freshmen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's begin with the possible starters of the returning players and freshmen for Syracuse basketball next season. And let's begin with J.J. Starling, a junior shooting guard who transferred from Notre Dame last season. Last year, he started all 32 games for Syracuse on 34 minutes a game. Perhaps he doesn't play 34 minutes a game. That is an obscene number, and I think Syracuse has more depth than it did last season. But I think he is going to start every single game for this team next year, assuming that he is healthy. Last year, he averaged 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists per game on 46% shooting, which is pretty good. Only 32% from 3 and 71% from the free throw line, which isn't as good. I believe that his role for next year is going to be pretty similar to last year, except with there not being any Judah Mintz. I think that J.J. Starling is going to be the primary shot creator for Syracuse basketball next season. As the starting shooting guard, he could possibly be the one if Syracuse does something at the guard spot, right? If they add in another starting combo guard, or if they play a taller lineup, who knows if J.J. Starling will actually slide to point guard, but nevertheless, he's going to be in the starting lineup for next season. I think we can all assume that. The good news with J.J. Starling is that while his efficiency numbers don't really scream out at you as being anywhere super impressive, right? 32% from 3 isn't really the greatest in the world. It's not awful, but it's kind of like the borderline of like, all right, you're taking a lot of attempts here to only be 32%. His numbers did get better once ACC play rolled around, and that kind of correlates to the fact that he got better as the season went along, whether it was the fact that he was dealing with an injury in the first half of the season and or adjusting to being on a new team. He got better. He was 48% from the field against the ACC, 36% three-point range or 36% from 3 against the ACC. I think he's going to have a better season than he did last year, and last year was an improvement from his freshman season. His numbers went up across the board. I would say a fair expectation when we're talking about the role of J.J. Starling as the primary shot creator, the starting shooting guard, maybe the starting point guard. I think at minimum it should be to make an all-ACC team next season. At minimum. I think he does have that capability in him. He's a former 5-star high school recruit. He was one of the top players in the transfer portal when Syracuse got him last year. And he nearly made it last season. He was close. He didn't quite get there to even the honorable mention team. But I believe that if he can continue his efficiency numbers that he showed at the end of last season, where he was 36% from 3 against the ACC, he will make an all-conference team. So I think that is a fair expectation for J.J. Starling next season when we're talking about the roles of the returning players and who's possibly starting and who's going to start for next season. Moving on from J.J. Starling is Chris Bell. Chris Bell is a junior small forward. He has spent both seasons with the Orange after being a four-star high school recruit in the class of 2022. He is the lone player from that class that is left. He started all 32 games for Syracuse last season on 27 minutes a night. And in fact, Chris Bell has played a total of 62 career college games for the Orange, and he has started every single one of them. So no reason to not believe that Chris Bell won't be in the starting lineup for next season. Last year, he averaged 12 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. He was 43% from the field, which is not great, but most of his shot attempts come from the three-point line, where he was 42%. That's pretty good. It was second in the ACC and top 20 overall in the country in three-point percentage. And his efficiency, kind of like J.J. Starling, was even better in ACC play. Their offense overall got better as the season went along last season. His role, pretty similar to last year, is to be the team's main sharpshooter, the main weapon, someone who can change a game on a dime, right? Didn't he hit like 8 threes against NC State in the first half last season? I mean, he has that capability. He's the guy who can do that. He's the primary sharpshooter. I would say he is going to be the starting small forward for next season, but it's possible if they run a taller lineup that he would slide over to the 2. That's possible. I also expect that he will see more than 27 minutes a game, at least for right now, because Syracuse does lack shooting on its team right now, and you need it. I think you need Chris Bell on the floor despite him not being great in other aspects of the game, right? I think his defense has definitely got to improve. I would like to see him get better on offense more than just shooting the basketball, right? Maybe he can become someone who can create his own shot off the dribble. But for now, Chris Bell, I expect to be the team's main sharpshooter for next season. That is his role. And I believe, similar to J.J. Starling, once again, a fair expectation for Chris Bell next season is to make an all-ACC team. I think that's fair for him too, considering the fact that he was second in the ACC last year in three-point percentage and averaged 12 points a game. He's not a well-rounded player, but he's an excellent shooter, and you don't need to be a well-rounded player to make an all-conference team. You don't need to be great at everything. But I think he's going to be better next season. I think his numbers are going to go up across the board. Dare I say, even if J.J. Starling is the primary shot creator, is Chris Bell going to lead the team in scoring? 15 points per game, maybe? I think it's possible. But I would say a fair expectation for Chris Bell, make an all-conference team. So of the 2 returning players for Syracuse basketball that are possibly starters, J.J. Starling, fair expectation to make an all-conference team, and Chris Bell to make an all-conference team. That's what I have for them. Now, moving on to, I said freshmen at the top of the show. I'm going to include the freshmen in here as well. Donnie Freeman, I expect to be in the starting lineup. He was the number 6 overall recruit in the ESPN 100 in the past rankings. He is said to be able to score at all 3 levels. He is also a good defender and a really good rebounder in the EYBL. He was second in the league, only behind Derek Queen, who is a 5-star player going to Maryland. And Syracuse is going to face Maryland, so that should be a good matchup. I have a podcast about Donnie Freeman, and here's the deal. I mean, just based on recruiting rankings and where these guys tend to end up in their first year in college, I'll repeat it. 9 of the past 10 number 6 overall recruits in the country have been one-and-done players. So I would set the expectations for Donnie Freeman really, really high. That being said, I think bare minimum for Donnie next season is to make an all-freshman team. I think that's bare minimum, all-freshman first team in the ACC. I think he could make a run for ACC Freshman of the Year. it kind of hurts him that he is the second highest recruit in the ACC. The problem is that the number one overall player in the country in Cooper Flagg is on Duke. So it might not be Donnie Freeman's fault that if he doesn't get ACC Freshman of the Year, but it's certainly possible. Judah Mintz came close. He came close. I believe he lost it to Kyle Filipowski. Perhaps Donnie Freeman once again follows suit and finishes second in the ACC Rookie of the Year or ACC Freshman of the Year, whatever they want to call it. But at minimum for Donnie Freeman, I would say a fair expectation for him is to make an ACC all-freshman team, just at minimum. You're the number 6 overall high school player in the country. I believe he should have an immediate impact day one for this team. So that concludes the possible starters, but really probable starters of the returning players for Syracuse basketball next season, plus freshmen. I have J.J. Starling as probably the starting shooting guard, his role being the primary shot creator and hopefully making an all-ACC team. Chris Bell, primary sharpshooter, going to probably be the starting small forward. And again, a fair expectation, make an all-ACC team. And Donnie Freeman, as I just said, at minimum, make an all-freshman team as the number 6 overall recruit in the country. So coming up, we'll talk about, of the returning players, who I think is going to come off the bench, plus Elijah Moore, a freshman. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is a tool that I use all the time to find the latest job opportunities. But LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we're going over the roles and expectations of the returning players for Syracuse basketball next season. We just talked about who I believe will be in the starting lineup. Oh, and by the way, forgot to mention, also the freshmen. So Donnie Freeman is included as well as and Elijah Moore, who we'll get to soon. But once again, I said that J.J. Starling, possible starter, along with Chris Bell and Donnie. Those are probably the starters for next year of the returners. And now let's go to who I think is going to come off the bench of the returning players next season, plus the freshmen. Let's start with the 7'4" center, Naheem McLeod. He started all 14 games for Syracuse. He started 14 games for Syracuse basketball last season. All the games that Naheem McLeod played in before he missed the rest of the season with a foot injury. He played about 15 minutes a game. He averaged 4 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 blocks. I believe that this year, though, his role is going to be the backup center behind Eddie Lampkin, playing pretty similar minutes to last season, 10 to 15 a night. That's basically what he did at Florida State. And at Florida State, he also only started about 35% of the games that he played in. So this is a role that Naheem McLeod is very comfortable being in. And I think he's going to look better, even if he's not actually better, because his expectations this year, I think, are lower. Right? I think most people would agree Eddie Lampkin's going to be the starting center, who I talked about it on yesterday's podcast. But that means that now Naheem McLeod can just be Naheem McLeod. He can be the backup center, be a solid defensive interior presence. He had 2 blocks per game last year and was only playing 15 minutes a game. So he can be a very serviceable, quality backup center for this team next year, even though last year he started all 14 games that he played in. Moving on to a junior point guard, a transfer from Kansas last season, Kyle Cuffe. Kyle Cuffe played in 29 games for Syracuse last year on about 11 minutes per game. In those 11 minutes, he averaged 3 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist on 41% from the field and 34% from the three-point line, which is pretty good. And he was less than 50%. In fact, it was 46% from the free throw line. He had limited attempts from there, but still, that's not good at all. 46% from the free throw line as a guard is especially not good. And I believe that it'll be better next season because it's really hard to do that again. It's kind of like how it's hard to shoot 90% from the free throw line. It's also hard to shoot only 46% from the free throw line. Something's got to give. I believe that Kyle Cuffe's role next season is going to be diminished from last year. Kind of similar to what I said about Naheem McLeod, except I believe that Naheem McLeod is going to play similar minutes. He's just going to come off the bench. With Kyle Cuffe, he's going to come off the bench again. He has not started a game, I believe, in college basketball in his career. He's not going to be playing 11 minutes a night like he was last season. I just don't see it. I believe that his role will be to play probably about 5 minutes a game when he is asked to play. I don't think he's going to be able to play every game. I really don't. I think this team is deeper than it was last season. And when I look at the depth chart, where does Kyle Cuffe fall in terms of the guards? Keep in mind, Syracuse still has 3 open scholarships remaining and are rumored to be going after another guard. But if you look at the guard chart right now, I would say that Kyle Cuffe is 5th. 5th on the depth chart right now. J.J. Starling is ahead of him. Jaquan Carlos is ahead of him. Chance Westry is ahead of him. And then if you want to debate Elijah Moore, sure. But I think Elijah Moore can bring something to this team that's different. Kyle Cuffe, they already have an upgraded Kyle Cuffe. His name is Jaquan Carlos. They also have Chance Westry coming back from injury. They have J.J. Starling, who's going to see probably 30 minutes a game at minimum. So if and when Kyle Cuffe is asked to play, I believe he'll probably play about 5 minutes. He's a solid defender. I'll give him that. But overall, I don't see him having much of a role for next season. I believe he'll drop down to 6th on the depth chart once they bring in another guard. I think they will. But at minimum, he's 4 or 5. So not seeing many minutes for Kyle Cuffe. Moving on to the biggest wild card for next season and really could be the make or break. It's Chance Westry, a 6'6" guard / forward. I believe he has 3 years of eligibility remaining. I believe last year, if you want to count that as a red shirt, and then the year. I don't think the NCAA is going to give him 2 red shirt years. I believe they would only give him 1. So that would mean that he has 3 years of eligibility left. That's just my opinion. He still could have 4, but who knows? He is a transfer from Auburn from last season, and he was looking really good in camp as a former high-end 4-star recruit in high school. But then he missed all of last season with a lower body injury that he suffered in a preseason practice. And he's also dealt with knee injuries at Auburn. This is someone who can be a Swiss Army knife for Syracuse next season. That's how I see his role playing out. He can play the point guard. He can play the 2 guard. He can play small forward. He can play the 1 through 3 in the lineup. He's known to have great court vision. He's an excellent passer. That's what the scouting reports say. It's not that I'm down on him. It's just that you never know with him, right? We don't know exactly what he's going to look like next season. That's not to say that he's going to have a bad year or that he's going to have a good year. But Chance Westry, I believe that his role assuming that he is healthy next season and hopefully pretty good, is to be a Swiss Army knife, a utility player that you can just throw him in the lineup and he can play anywhere. A guy that can play a 1 through the 3 allows you to do so much. You can play small ball and have him at the 3. You can play a taller lineup because you can move Chance Westry to a starting point guard or move him as the shooting guard, whatever it is. The fact that he's so versatile is extremely valuable for this team, which is why if he's really good next season, I think Syracuse is in great shape to not just make the tournament, but to be one of the higher seeds in the tournament next season, possibly maybe a 7 or higher. There's upside. Just can he, with the injuries and all the time that he has missed, can he get to the level that he was in high school as a high-end 4-star recruit? That is the question mark with Chance Westry. But his role is to probably be the Swiss Army knife for this team next season, anywhere from the 1 through the 3 in the lineup. Finally, Elijah Moore. He is a consensus 4-star shooting guard in the class of 2023 or class of 2024. I'm getting my years mixed up. He is known to be an excellent shooter. We've talked about it on the podcast, and his role for next season is hopefully to be one of the main shooters on the team. I don't see him ever starting a game. They are loaded at the guard spot, and I believe they will add in another one. I wouldn't say they're loaded. Actually, I take that back. They're not loaded at the guard spot, but if Elijah Moore is hitting his shot, then they become loaded at the guard spot. I believe that his role, as I said, is going to be dependent on if he can hit his jump shot or not. If he can hit it, great. He'll play. He'll probably play between 15 and 20 minutes. If not, he's not going to play much at all. Plain and simple. That's the deal with Elijah Moore. He could be Chris Bell comes off the bench, but you bring in Elijah Moore so you still have that shooting on the floor. That's what it could be. Hopefully it is. We just have to see it. So I believe that concludes the possible bench players and freshmen for the returning players next season. Naheem McLeod, primary backup center. Kyle Cuffe, he's not going to play 11 minutes a night next year. I would say 5 minutes a game when he's called upon to even play. Chance Westry coming back from injury is a Swiss Army knife. He can play the 1 through 3. And then you have Elijah Moore. It's his shooting. Can he shoot the basketball next season? That's really what it's dependent on. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And NBA fans out there, the finals start on June 6th, which is just 3 days away. The Celtics are currently the favorite at minus 220, and the Mavericks are sitting as the underdog plus 184. So you're feeling confident about who's going to win then? Those are the odds if you're going to take the straight money lines on who is going to win this series. Celtics at minus 220, Mavericks at plus 184. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we're wrapping up today's show. Just to once again reiterate, we are talking about the roles and expectations of the returning players and the freshmen for Syracuse basketball next season. The possible starters I have are J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, who I both believe can make all conference teams next year. And then there's Donnie Freeman, who at minimum I said should at least make all ACC freshman team. And he could make a run at ACC Freshman of the Year. Just unfortunately, Duke has the #1 player in the class in Cooper Flagg, so it's going to be hard to beat him out. Then there's the possible bench players It's Naheem McLeod behind Eddie Lampkin. Kyle Cuffe more reserve next season than he was last year. Chance Westry coming in after the injury that he had last year in preseason. And then there is Elijah Moore, a consensus 4-star shooting guard. Hopefully, he can carve out a path for Syracuse, or a path to playing time next season. Really, it just depends on if he's hitting his shot or not. So that concludes this edition of the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I'm dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.